Live.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of College Football Game Day Live. I'm Thor Nystrom, joined as always by my co-host Mike Farrell. Mike, how are you doing today on another glorious college football Saturday?
Glorious. I don't think it can match last week, but we're gonna try. I'm ready. I mean, there's some fun games today.
Yes, there are some fun games. We're excited to get into all of it. We will be with you guys live for the next 90 minutes, going through all the games, handicapping them, giving out our favorite sides, totals, props, the whole gamut. And please ask questions. Anyone that's in here, Mike and I will get to questions throughout the episode. So please ask them. We also want to give a shout out to our sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook. If you sign up for a new account today using the promo code CFBPros and make a minimum deposit of $5 or more, you get a free $50 bet. Take advantage of that deal today. Mike, let's get into this thing. Our first game on today's docket, going to the noon Eastern kickoffs. Syracuse at Clemson. Mike, we are about to find out if the Syracuse Orange are for real. We have a live spread on this one of Clemson minus 14. With a total sitting at 49.5. Where do you lean in this one?
It's a low total, right?
Low total.
I lean Cuse, though. I mean, I like that total. This is an interesting game because I think both teams play well defensively. You know, people haven't seen Syracuse a lot. I've watched them quite a bit. My buddy who does the research for me, Chife, is a big Syracuse fan, like big Syracuse fan. So I've watched them simply because they're undefeated and they've been playing well. And that back-end defense is extremely, extremely good. So
yes,
this could be a low-scoring game, but that number is low. But here's the thing with Syracuse. They just cover. That's what they do. You know, they're 5-1 in their last 6 games against the spread, 7-0 in their last 7 in October, 10-3 in their last 13 games played in week 8. I mean, every number we crunched for this came up Syracuse going to cover. So you give me 2 touchdowns, I'm taking Syracuse in this one. I think with the running game, you know, with Schrader being a runner and Tucker obviously being arguably the best running back in college football, they can slow the pace. They can keep Clemson off the field and keep this game close. This Syracuse team doesn't look like one that's going to get blown out. Similar to Iowa State. You made the point a couple of weeks ago, Iowa State doesn't get blown out. Syracuse used to, but this season, I don't believe this team can be blown out. So I'm taking Syracuse plus the 14.
You know, I'm going to agree with you on this one. I'm going to go accused. I had a hard time with this game all week, in part because Clemson's offense is leveled up, but we haven't seen it play a legitimate defense. The one time it did, Uiagalelei, his game played down, and then Syracuse, they've had sort of a soft schedule to get here. And their hardest games, they circumstantially were fortunate in. NC State, of course, you know, going back last week without Leary. And then earlier this season when they played Purdue outgained them in that game by like 140 yards. And Syracuse benefited from a couple of calls at the end of that game. But that being said, 14 points is a lot of points here, both because we know that Syracuse's offense can now move the ball more efficiently than it has in the past. Adding the passing element, you know, after they got the offensive coordinator, Robert and Nye, has leveled up Garrett Schrader. Garrett Schrader is averaging nearly 10 yards per passing attempt, which is absolutely crazy in conjunction with that ridiculous running offense. Uiagalelei, his stats are awesome. 17-2 TDI&T ratio. You look at his PFF stats, 20 big-time throws to just 3 turnover-worthy plays. But again, Clemson hasn't really played any defenses yet. Florida State's 91st in success rate. Boston College's 60th in EPA per play allowed this season. Wake Forest is middle of the pack in success rate. Louisiana Tech, of course, is terrible. Georgia Tech's defense is terrible. And Mike, to your point about Syracuse's defense, not only is it good, in particular, and you pointed this out, their secondary is the pronounced strength of it. They have 4 veteran defensive backs, and Syracuse right now ranks number 5 in PFF coverage grade. That could spell a problem for DJU, who is now stepping up in competition in terms of the defense that he's playing. Like I said, the one game against a legit D that he had this year, his game played down. Also, Syracuse doesn't give up the explosive plays that Clemson has sort of feasted on offense. So I'm going to take the points with Syracuse. Like I said, this is a tough one because both teams are stepping up in competition a bit here. but I do trust the Syracuse team a little bit. And you have to mention, Dino Babers has been money against Dabo Swinney over his career. He's covered Dino has covered 4 of his last 5 games against Dabo. And Syracuse has been a giant killer too. They've covered 4 of their last 5 games against AP top 5 opponents. So I'm going to agree with you, and I'm going to take the points with Syracuse. Mike, our next one, it's not a college football game day live if we're not talking about the Kansas Jayhawks. So we had to get this one in here. Kansas is traveling down to Waco today to play Baylor. Baylor is a 10-point favorite with a total on this game of 60. What side do you like in this one?
I love Lance Leipold. I love what he's done at Kansas. I think he's going to be a hot commodity on the coaching carousel. Everything about me wants to pick Kansas, but I just don't see it. I like Baylor in this matchup. I mean, they kind of own Kansas, and I know this is a new Kansas, so it's hard to really tell. Are we talking about the Beatty Kansas? There's been so many bad Kansases, but they're 6-0 against the spread at home against Kansas. They're 12-1 when they're the favorite in this matchup. Kansas is 0-10 against the spread against Baylor. In their last 10 games, 1-11, in the last 12 overall. Everything speaks to Kansas doesn't match up well with Baylor. Baylor's been erratic this season, up and down, been a disappointment, to be honest with you. But I really do like laying that line and taking Baylor here, even though it goes against everything I want to do because I like Lance.
Yeah, but to your point, Baylor has been a disappointment this year. I thought that they would be better, although the last game against West Virginia, the circumstances went against them where Blake Shapen, who was having arguably the best game of his career, I think it was the best game of his career to that point, early in the third quarter, he gets knocked out. Siaki Ika got knocked out in that game, their best defender, the first-round behemoth nose guard, 358 pounds, and Craig Squirrel Williams got knocked out too. And Baylor's running back depth was already a little bit shot because Tay McWilliams, they haven't really had him all year. So they're going to have to – I think Squirrel Williams is out for this game. Even more usage is going to go to Richard Reese, the breakout freshman. But it looks like Blake Shapen is going to be back. The market had this game at Baylor -8 earlier in the week when Shapen looked very, very iffy. The news we got on him later in the week was way more optimistic. And it's, again, the signs are pointing to him playing. With Shapen playing, for me, this becomes a lean. I would have been very confident in Kansas's ability to win this game outright if they were facing Kyron Drones, because Kyron Drones categorically is not able to take advantage of Kansas's biggest weakness, which is their pass defense and their secondary overall, especially because Kansas suffered another enormous injury in their last game against Oklahoma. Kobe Bryant, their cornerback one, is out with a leg injury. So a bad secondary just got worse. With Shapen playing, Shapen is the pocket passer. He's the guy that can do damage against that. Again, the last time out when they played West Virginia, who has an equally stinky pass defense to Kansas, he lit him up for over 300 yards in the first half before he went out. He almost threw for more yards than he had in any game in his career, just through two quarters and a sliver. So with Shapen in, it becomes more precarious. And Ika as well, because Ika can help address the efficiency of Kansas's running game. But getting the 10 points, I am going to lean towards Kansas here. Shapen, we don't know exactly what percent he is. We don't know what percent Ika is. And like I said, Baylor's running back depth is shot right now. So you have to have this, this small true freshman, Richard Reese, assume all of this usage. We'll see how he does with that. We'll also see how Shapen is. But if he's not 100%, you wonder whether he can take full advantage of Kansas' secondary. But Baylor would certainly prefer that to Kyron Drones. But with it being a 10, I'm going to lean towards Kansas in that one.
It's 10.5 now on DraftKings.
Especially with 10.5 then.
And it's moving,
moving
in that direction. So I don't know if Kansas will have a solution for Gavin Holmes. He's really been playing a lot better lately. He's a big hitter, 25 yards per catch. A couple of long plays to him changes the momentum. And like I said, Baylor kind of owns Kansas in this series. And it's hard because everybody owns Kansas historically because they've been so bad lately. But at home, I'm going to lay the 10.5. It goes against what I think. You'd think Kansas has been playing well all season long, staying within, but this is just, to me, if everybody's healthy, and that's your point, it's not a good matchup for Kansas whatsoever. So we're on opposites on this one. We're gonna have to tweet back and forth on this one.
Yeah, this one's gonna come a lot down to Shapen, how Shapen plays. But if Shapen shows up and he's close to 100%, he is gonna have success against the Kansas secondary. Like I was mentioning, the line movement this morning is interesting. It reminds me of last week, Kansas against Oklahoma, where that line had been at, it toggled up during the week when we found out Gabriel was going to play late in the week, and it got up to 10. You remember this, Mike, on Saturday morning, and then it even ticked to 10.5 right before kickoff. What was interesting about that is no one that bet that line afterwards on Kansas lost the ticket. Kansas pushed the 10, and they won the bets at 10.5. So yeah. Watch for this line this morning. If this thing starts to get out of control towards the Baylor side with more of the public hearing the Shapen thing, if that thing gets up a couple more points, certainly with it, getting over 10, that being the key number, I think that might open a little bit of a window of value on Kansas, a team that you were mentioning, Mike. This was Syracuse. Kansas has also not been blown out this season. Their 2 losses were by 7 to TCU when they were driving at the end of that game to potentially force overtime. Two missed no calls on that one at the end, and then last week was a 10-point loss to Oklahoma.
Yeah, and that hook, that 10.5 hook last week was probably one of the more interesting line changes at the end because it cost so many people so much money.
It sure did. Yeah, so definitely monitor that line this morning. But if you're interested in Kansas, I would wait on that thing for another hour and a half because it doesn't seem like Kansas is getting the money this morning. I think more people are finding out about shape and status. So, wait on that one until you can potentially get it over 10 if that's where this thing is headed. Guys, one more game we're going to talk about, and then we're going to get to audience questions. If you have any questions about a prop, about a side that you're looking at, about a total, write it into the chat box, and we will get to it here in just a second. Mike, our next game, we're going to my other alma mater, Iowa, and this is going to be an ugly one for Iowa graduates like myself. Iowa is heading to the Horseshoe to play Ohio State, and do we got a 30-point underdog now, Mike, live in the market?
Let me check for you. It's 29.5.
29.5. Okay. We're getting just a slight amount of Iowa money after it had toggled to 30. And we got a total on this game of 50, which ain't much higher than the minus 29.5. Mike, who do you lean in this game?
Stick over, man. And I know the reason that number is at 50. I know the reason is because Iowa's offense is horrendous. And I wrote an article this week that, if Kirk Ferentz isn't going to get rid of his son, and I know it's not his decision, the athletic director makes these decisions, blah, blah, blah. He's got to go because this offense is inept and it's embarrassing and it's awful. So the assumption here is that Ohio State will score, 35 or so, and Iowa will score 7, and you got a 42. Or maybe Iowa puts in 10 and Ohio State scores 40. But I think Iowa is going to get a couple touchdowns here. I don't know how because they have nobody. And I think Ohio State's going to beat them, but in that 25-point range. So I'm not touching the side here. I think that over is really low because, honestly, Ohio State could win this game 52-7. And that's what I'm looking at as well. So I'm going to take the over here.
I'm going to, and that's interesting because both the over and the Iowa cover, it comes down to, can Iowa get to, 14 points for sure? Yep. Yeah, I mean, even 10 points, they'll have a shot because Iowa's offense deserves the mockery. Believe me, as someone who's watched every snap of them this year, it's as pathetic as everyone is telling you. But the defense is absolutely legit. Might be the best in the nation. At least it is to SP+. Iowa's the number 1 defense in the nation. Iowa also has the top 10 special teams unit. So they're going to be able to suppress Ohio State's offense to a degree. It's just, can that offense get into double digits? Can it get to 10? Can it get to 14? We're not going to do the same bet, Mike, but I'm basically agreeing with your line of thinking in leaning towards Iowa in this game. I'm not going to buy a ticket on it just because, this thing could get very, very ugly. But getting the 30 points, again, in my head, you just got to get to 10, maybe to 14. And by hook or by crook, I think maybe Iowa can do it. At least Iowa doesn't, their offense, at least they don't turn the ball over. I had sort of a tongue-in-cheek tweet earlier this week, but it's true. Spencer Petras has actually thrown more passing attempts than CJ Stroud, and they have the same amount of interceptions. Now, everything else is totally different, of course, but Iowa is going to protect the ball, and then they're going to punt it back to you. I was joking that it's like Red Bell used offense from the Bourbon Bowl when he was facing the Water Boy. It's just like, dealing on the ball 3 times and punting or whatever. But if we can just get those 10 points, maybe through field position, maybe even a defensive touchdown. Mike, I hesitate to even bring this up, but I was in Kinnick Stadium several years ago when it was Iowa against JT Barrett's Ohio State team. Ohio State came in heavily favored. Iowa had, I think, 3 pick sixes in that game.
Yeah.
And it turned into it's the game where Nate Stanley, it was like they scored like 56 points. Definitely not saying that that's going to happen today, but it's only going to take a special teams touchdown or a defensive touchdown if they can't get the offensive one, and they're in play for those.
Iowa fans cannot help but mention that game. I mean, you just can't help yourself.
Well,
now, again, that was
contractually obligated, Mike.
Well, a better team, not as good as an Ohio State team. It was at Kinnick. But it was a huge surprise.
It's a different situation for sure.
They blew them out. I mean, didn't they score like 50 points against that Ohio State defense or something? It was crazy. Yeah. But to your point here, listen, CJ Stroud is not a god, right? He's not infallible. He's thrown 3 picks this season. He could turn the ball over. This Iowa defense, they have a good secondary. I mean, they lost some key components in the front 7. They have a good secondary. And if you do film work on CJ Stroud, he locks in on one guy. So there could be a couple of interceptions for Stroud here, and that could lead to field position. And, of course, field position leads to field goals. So maybe, because it's Iowa, maybe they get to 13 points. But that's what I'm banking on. I'm banking on Ohio State hitting the 30s for sure. And I'm banking on, 10 plus more points for Iowa in a bit of a surprise here. I want to take that 29.5 because Ohio State should be favored by 30 points against Rutgers, Indiana, some real crap teams. They should never be favored by 30 points against Iowa. And it's all because of the offense. So, gun to head, I would take Iowa to cover that 29.5, but give me the over here. It reeks of a low number, and it's going to go over.
Okay. There we have it on that one. Going to audience questions now. Mike, we're starting with a David Hall asks, what do you guys think of the new uniforms being unveiled today? Who is the best? What we got some new uniforms today. I'm not on Uniform Watch. I don't know.
Oh my God, I'm all over Uniform Watch.
Oh, awesome. Okay, this is yours.
I just absolutely love uniforms. I mean, and I think it plays into how a team performs. Honestly, I really do. We remember when Notre Dame used to go to the all green when they were undefeated a couple times, and then they lost both of those games. It's just like the right time to do it. I think TCU has a blackout uniform. And we're going to get to that. But Oregon has a breast cancer awareness uniform. Gorgeous. Check it out. There's some pink in there. I mean, it is just as smooth as can be. And we're going to get to those 2 games. So TCU is our last game that we're going to talk about. Uniforms don't really play a factor, but I just love uniforms. So those are the 2 that I'm looking at.
I have to say last week, was it last week, right? When Utah played USC, the helmets that Utah had were chef's kiss. With Jordan and the other kid on the helmets. I thought that was real cool. And apparently the people in the stadium, they did something at like halftime or something that was like super powerful as well. So anyway, shout out to Utah for those for that idea with those helmets.
I am a uniform, I'm a helmet uniform addict. So I look at this stuff constantly, and that's a great question, even though it has nothing to do with the spread.
Well, let's get to one that does. Our next question is from Mike Huseman. Cincinnati -4 at SMU. What do you guys think about that one? Do you have a lean in that one, Mike?
So this is our guy, Mike, who I love, and he's finally not asking about a complete degenerate 1 versus 5 matchup, which I'm very happy
ask about Hawaii and Colorado State, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Which those are fun because that is complete dumpster diving. But this is actually a pretty good game, and I was upset I couldn't find props on this. At least where I looked, I couldn't find props because I think this is a prop-worthy game. I like SMU. If you're giving me 4 points at home, I know they've been playing erratically this season. You know, they're 3-3. The offense has been up and down. But I really do like their matchup here. I think Cincinnati's been playing a little bit over their head. And I think they might be due for a loss on the road, at the very least, a close field goal win. So I like SMU in this one, getting 4 points at home.
Yeah, this one I'm going to stay away from the side because this feels like a really good spot for SMU, but I don't trust SMU as far as I can throw them. So I can't bet on the side. I would lean towards the over. I do, mostly trust SMU's offense, and Cincinnati can do some stuff on offense as well. Like the quarterback they found from EMU, the kid that they brought back has been solid this year, and they can do some stuff there as well. And of course, we know SMU's defense is not very good. That total on that game, my system was above it. I got a total on that one of my adjusted total is 67.5. The last total I saw on it was just
59 and a half 59. Right now. Yeah.
So I'm showing value on that over, and that would be where I would lean in that one.
Well, the prop I wanted in this game was to see where Rashee Rice's yardage were going to be. The guy's just tearing it up. I mean, 49 catches, 761, 4 touchdowns, averaging 15.5. He is their guy that makes this offense go. And I was kind of hoping to see like maybe a low 89 number because he's going to go over that. But there was I couldn't find props. I was, when I was doing my prop article, this was one of the ones I wanted because I think there's a slight undervalue in the prop world of Rice. So if you can find him, I would take him over if the number's reasonable, if it's like 89 yards receiving.
Especially with Jake Bailey had suffered that, I think, season-ending injury. A guy that had gotten some usage for SMU as well. And I think they had one other wide receiver injury, which Rice was already, he already gets pounded with targets, but it's been even more ever since then. So.
With targets. He's got 761 yards. The next closest guy is Bailey that you mentioned is injured, 205. Like, they feed him and feed him and feed him and feed him, and they don't run the ball that well. So the entire offense rolls around him. He's a 15, 20 target guy in this game. So, I was a little upset I couldn't find a prop on it. And maybe that's why, because it's easy money.
Bo Corrales is the other receiver for SMU that's out for the season. So, yeah, it's going to be the right show for sure. We got another question about the Cincinnati game and SMU game. Brock asks us, how do you feel about Cincinnati taking 70% of the bets right now? So I assume 76% of the tickets being purchased are on Cincinnati.
Makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, you're talking about an SMU team that, lost a close one to Maryland, lost to TCU, got blown up by UCF, beat Navy last week, but who cares? They're playing good football teams. And that's why I kind of like them to cover the 4. They're playing good football teams. Maryland has proven to be a good football team. TCU, as we know, is undefeated. UCF is a very good one-loss team. So they're in these games except for the UCF one. I think they're a better team. But when you look at this from a 10,000-foot view, Cincinnati is number 21 in the country. SMU's 3-3. Let's take the Bearcats. And I think that's where all the money's going because they're on this roll of winning, but it's not really overly impressive winning. The Tulsa game, they won by 10. South Florida, they beat by 4, and South Florida sucks. So like you said earlier, I think Cincinnati's sort of ripe for the taking here on the road. But I think people are looking at 21 versus 3-3, and they're hammering that line.
For sure. Yeah, and I trust, like, just in a vacuum, like, not this game, just in a vacuum, I trust Cincinnati more than I do SMU. But I recognize the situational spot, and my system prefers SMU. Like, my line on that is close to pick 'em. So it doesn't surprise me at all that the public, would also trust Cincinnati more and be buying more of those tickets. But for me, I'm staying away from the thing, at least the side of it. Next question. Mike Lukovitz asks about Bo Nix's player prop number for rushing yards is 39.5 against that sieve of a UCLA defense. I don't know if you've looked into this one at all, Mike, but do you have any thoughts on the Bo Nix over under 39.5 rushing yard?
Well, he's been rushing for more than that. I'm trying to find the actual live number here because that sounds, a little low. It's actually 35.5. So he is, if you look at the statistics, Bo Nix leads the Pac-12 in a specific category. And it's a rushing category. It's really weird. Or at least he did heading into last week. I haven't looked at it since. But when you look at, rushing yards in the Pac-12, and you look at, specifically, you expect the Charbonneaus of the world and guys like that to be up there. You go Travis Dye, Charbonneau, Jaden Ott, the freshman at Cal. But Bo Nix is leading the Pac-12 in yards per carry at 8.3. And he's putting up good rushing yards. So I would go above that. And I know you mentioned that the whole Civ situation. I think UCLA will give up more than that. But, I didn't put it in my props. I have my 5 props. He's got 70, 141, but there's a couple games, Washington State and BYU, he had 30 and 35. And prior to that, 18 and 37. He's running the ball more as the season progresses. So you got to assume that he could get over that number, but it's not one that I touched.
So you said, Mike, the number you saw was 35.5?
Yeah, which is even lower than 39.5. I mean, that's a pretty good number.
Yeah, I would lean over on that. And I'll probably bet that one now that I know that number is out there. But yeah, I'm gonna go over on that. Nick says if we set the threshold at 35, he's rushed for 35 or more yards in 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 7 games for Oregon, and 2 of them where it was under. Mike was mentioning this, but he went for 30 and 1 and 18 and 1. I just screwed up my math. 2, 4, 6. So 4 of the 6.
Yeah,
on 35 or above.
Yeah, including against Georgia, where he ran for 37 in an absolute rout, and and then Arizona and Stanford aren't good. He ran for 141 and 70 against them, so way over. But
yeah,
but UCLA is, as you mentioned, not a tremendous run defense, and I think you could hit that. That's a good prop to find. I think I would take the over. I didn't touch it, but I might now because 35 is lower than 39. I thought it would be 39.
The only thing that would hinder that is potentially sacks, depending on how many he takes. UCLA, they, as you know, like in the transfer portal, they brought in the Murphy twins and like stuff like that. They can rush the passer a little bit, but Nix is going to run for more than that. It's just in college, you got to keep in mind, and I'm sure everyone watching this knows this, the sack yardage is taken out of the rushing total. But of course, it was also in Nix's body of work to this point. And he's averaged more than that. And now he's going up against another bad defense.
Yeah, and speaking of props, I forgot to mention, I have my prop in the Syracuse Clemson game. I've got Garrett Schrader under 225.5 passing yards. Okay. I think he's going to, I think Tucker's going to run a lot. I think Schrader's going to run a lot. Clemson has a pretty good defense. I think that number's inflated a little bit because they feel that Syracuse is going to be down and they're going to have to throw the ball. But he's under that 225 in two of his last 4 games, and I would take the under with Garrett Schrader passing for more than 225.5.
Okay, so a couple different prop angles for people to look at. We got a couple more questions.
Yeah, we can do these quick.
Okay, Adrian Martinez over. I guess his over/under is 71.5 yards. Mike asks us if we have an angle on that one.
Over.
You're going over on the Adrian Martinez?
Yeah. The guy's only thrown like 4 touchdowns and no interceptions.
Yeah.
He runs the ball. That's what he does. He's a running quarterback. He's actually essentially another running back. So take the over on that one.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Not taking many chances. And Martinez at this point, 3 of the last 4 games, or the last 3 games, 148 rushing yards, 171 and 77. TCU, love the offense, but the defense can be had. I probably lean that way too. Next question, David Hall. David Hall asks, "Why is Texas favored?" Do you have an answer to that one, Mike?
That's just a simple, straightforward question. I kind of like it. It's not even like
there's a beautiful simplicity to it.
Well, yeah, and it's not even like what's the number. So Oklahoma State's ranked higher, right? And they're coming off their first loss, and it was a close, hard-fought loss to TCU. Texas is a little bit erratic. Texas is on the road, favored by 6. I don't really have an answer for that one. I think what this is my guess. Quinn Ewers looks so good. Xavier Worthy looks so good. Bijan Robinson looks so good. Oklahoma State's defense can be really, really bad. And I think if they get in a shootout, there's a feeling that Texas is going to win a shootout and win it by a touchdown. But, looking at it logically, 5-1 versus 5-2, higher ranked team at home shouldn't really be an underdog. Do you have a reason?
Well, my adjusted line on that game is Texas -2. I think you can explain the other 4.5 points by two things. The Texas tax. People want to bet on them more than they want to bet on Oklahoma State, and I'm sure they've gotten more money this week. And then the other thing being Spencer Sanders' shoulder status, right? There was some indecision about that earlier in the week. Is he going to play or is he not? I'd heard he was going to play. Seems like we've gotten even more positive reports that he's going to play. So, Spencer Sanders is going to play. But the shoulder is still a bit compromised. We've seen that the past couple games. His accuracy has ticked down. The Texas run defense is really good. Where you can get them is their pass defense. Will Spencer Sanders' shoulder be sound enough for him to be able to take advantage of Texas's shoddy coverage? We'll find out. But I think those two things together are the reason why Texas is favored.
And as of 17 minutes ago, he's still questionable. So it's going to be, a game time decision.
Mike Gundy's going to leave us guessing until kickoff.
We'll find out before 3:30, but right now we don't know.
One last question, Mike, and we'll get back into it. The great King Leo asks, why do bettors have so much faith in LSU? Maybe we should save that one because I got faith on them today, and we're about to talk about that game. So we'll save on that one. Let's
save that one because that's one game away. But let's talk about DraftKings and the deal they've got going on here because it's just honestly it's free money.
It's a great bet, yeah. And we want to again thank our title sponsor DraftKings Sportsbook. You can get a free $50 bet today by signing up for a new account, make a minimum deposit of $5, and enter the promo code CFB Pros. That's it. Now they're going to give you a free $50 bet. The link is below, I think, if below on the screen where you're watching. So click that link, put in the code CFB Pros, and get that free $50 bet. And hopefully we can give you a couple winners today to use it on.
Yeah, the link is also pinned at the top of my Twitter at mfarrell sports. So you just click the link. Remember to put in CFB Pros, and you're going to get that free $50. And you can take that free $50 if you want and put it on one of my amazing props, or you could jam it on Bo Nix, as we just mentioned.
DK has a lot of. I like the props that they offer. They have a lot of player props. Yeah, I love that. Some books they won't offer the college player props. I don't love that, but
it's going to get more and more too. College football betting, you're going to see more and more props. Right now, you notice how you see like first touchdown score, and you see all this in the NFL. That's coming. It's going to be even more exciting on DraftKings, and that's I've been on all the other sites. I like DraftKings the best simply because I do love their props.
From your lips to God's ears about getting more props and college football betting becoming more popular because that's our life, isn't it, Mike?
Well, they could hire me to do the props. I can come up with these numbers for them if they want.
If anyone from DraftKings is listening, Mike Farrell is available to set your prop lines in the future.
Always.
Mike, jumping now into the afternoon games. 3 p.m. Eastern kickoff in this one, going back to the Big 12. West Virginia at Texas Tech. Texas Tech is a 6-point favorite with a total on this game of 65.5. Do you like a side in this one?
I like Texas Tech. I'm a big Joey McGuire guy. I think West Virginia is very erratic. They're coming off of a very important, hard-fought win. There's a little bit of feeling that maybe Neil Brown is the guy, and anytime that happens with a coach that I don't think is very good, they're going to disappoint. It's on the road. Texas Tech it's a formidable team. He had to revamp this defense. This defense was horrible, and they're actually hanging in there with some progress. Like Kansas State. They gave up 37, lost 37-28. They gave up 41 to Oklahoma State. But a couple of years ago, even a year ago, that might have been 60 points.
Mike, Texas Tech, they're up to 55 SP plus defense, and they played the number 7 strength of schedule to this point.
And it's remarkable. There's certain remarkable jobs, Lance Leipold at Kansas, that are overlooked a little bit. Lance is not overlooked, but this is a remarkable transition and change because I think it was last year they gave up 60-plus points twice and 50-plus in another game. They're not doing that now. They're staying in football games, even to like NC State with Devin Leary before he got injured. They only gave up 27. So I like the defense because it's always one of those things where you think, okay, the defense is going to let them down. And this West Virginia, Texas Tech game is going to be an absolute shootout and blah, blah, blah. It will be a high-scoring game, but it won't be as high-scoring as we're used to in this battle. And I really like Texas Tech to cover this at home. I think we're going to see what happens here when there's a little bit of momentum built up at West Virginia, a little bit amount of cachet for Neil Brown. I think he's going to fall flat on his face. And this isn't anything against Neil Brown. I just think that this team, doesn't really play for him when the chips are down. And that's what I'm expecting against Texas Tech.
Yeah, I won't couch my words with Neil Brown. I don't think he's done a very good job at West Virginia, and I'm not sure he's going to be their coach in week 1 next year, and especially with the way that the schedule plays out for them the rest of the season. This matchup, we got to talk about Tyler Shuck. Tyler Shuck returned to practice. They seem to be optimistic about his status for this game. That would be good if he's back because Baron Morton – he looked pretty his arm looked real legit in his first game, but he was physically compromised a bit in the lower half. The mobility wasn't there. I don't know what percentage Baron Morton is now. Obviously, he's the future of the program, but we'll see on that. And then Dominic Smith had gotten, or Dominic Smith, I believe, is an old Mets first baseman. Donovan Smith, who is also a Bucks tackle, I believe, in the NFL. But the Texas Tech quarterback, he had played well earlier this season, but seemed to get in the doghouse in recent weeks. Baron Morton was surprisingly announced as the starter, and then it was like, is Donovan Smith injured? But then you saw him. He came out for a couple snaps playing receiver, so it was really weird. But anyway, if Shuck comes back in this game and he's anywhere near 100%, the rust isn't just covering his body, they're going to be able to destroy the crappy West Virginia pass defense, which is one of the worst, I would say, in the nation. I'm not going to even put the caveat of Power 5. Anybody can throw on the West Virginia defense. And especially if either Morton or Shuck are in there and are close to 100%, you can expect 1 billion passing yards from Texas Tech. West Virginia at least has the efficiency on offense. I don't think Donaldson is back for this one, their big play running back. But they're going to be able to put up at least enough points. But really, I think Texas Tech, it's going to be the offensive explosion. On the side of this one, I'm definitely not back in West Virginia. But it seems like the whole betting market is with me on, preferring Texas Tech because this line seems like you have to pay a tax on the Texas Tech side. I'm not willing to do that. So I'm going to shy away from that, even though I do trust Texas Tech more. I would go the over in this one just because I expect, again, Texas Tech to throw for 1 billion yards and put up a bunch of points that way. And West Virginia is going to at least score some, although your point's well taken, Mike, about the improvement of the Texas Tech defense. But so I'm going to go over. Mike likes Texas Tech. Mike, our next one, and this is going to go back to one of the questions that we have before. Ole Miss traveling to LSU at 3:30 Eastern today. LSU, the line keeps coming up. Is it still at 2 live right now on DraftKings?
Let me see. LSU is no, it's 1.5. So
it's not. Okay.
Minus 1.5.
Okay. So Ole Miss had started out as the favorite, and the thing had toggled over the threshold and gotten up to LSU -2. Looks like maybe there's a little bit of buyback this morning, but so we'll say LSU -1.5 with a total on this game of 65. What side do you like in this one, Mike?
I like LSU, and to the point of, the question is, why do people like LSU? I mean, obviously, you look at this, and this is an undefeated Ole Miss team, top 10 program. LSU is a bit erratic. The reason I like them is they're at home and they're starting to gel. They're starting to play together. Jaden Daniels was doing a lot of this by himself. He was running the ball a lot more. He wasn't getting receivers involved. And I think the offense was a little bit stagnant from that. And then we saw against Florida last week, we got our guy Keishawn Butte back involved. He's one of my props again this week because his number is still low. It's 53.5 receiving yards. It's easy money to me. He had a 100-yard game last week. He's going to have a 100-yard game this week, and you might even want to get him 0.5 over in a touchdown receiving because he's caught one touchdown this season. The team is starting to gel. Brian Kelly has this team playing together. Ole Miss is a good football team. Arguably they're due for a letdown. Their defense has been a big surprise this season. The offense with that running attack with the freshman and then Zach Evans. I mean, they can come at you in so many different ways. But I think people like LSU simply because of the projection of team chemistry that we're starting to see here, and they're at home, and it's a very, very difficult place to win. So I like LSU to cover this game. And you could hit the money line if you want. It's not worth it. If you want to hit the money line here, it's -1.5. But I think LSU wins this game outright, and I think they win it by a field goal.
So I got 2 plays on this game. I agree with you. I like LSU to win. I like them to cover that small number. But one of my favorite plays all week, certainly by far my favorite total play all week, is in this game. I love the under. I don't know why we had sort of a funny story with this total this week where it dropped at 66. It was one of the biggest discrepancies I showed, in terms of what my total was, which is 49.5 against a Vegas total. But I decided to wait to bet it. I didn't want to bet it on Sunday because it was so curiously high to me. It was like, are the books anticipating over money? And if so, maybe I can wait and get a better number. And indeed, it jumped up to 68 by, I think, Monday. So I was able to bet the under at 68. And then it started crashing down in the middle of the week on later on Wednesday and then into Thursday. And it had gotten down to 65.5 or whatever, or 65. And keeps coming down. Mike, do you see the live total on DraftKings on this game? Yeah. Just to get an exact number on it.
It's 64.5.
It keeps coming down, man. That's what is that? 3.5? It's too early for me to do math, but 3.5 points in the last 2+ days. So after initial money came in on the over. I love the under. My system loves the under. Ole Miss's defense has been better this year than we thought coming in, but their offense hasn't been quite as good, especially on the passing side. The run game has been just fine. That thing has lived up to expectations for sure. And we had high ones with the former 5-star Zach Evans, like Mike was mentioning, signing over the offseason. But Ole Miss is running the ball on more than 65% of their offensive snaps, in part because Lane Kiffin doesn't trust Jackson Dart as much as he trusted Matt Corral. In the Ole Miss's last 3 games, all against SEC teams and not against particularly great ones. It was Vanderbilt, Auburn, and Kentucky. Jackson Dart threw 4 interceptions in those games. And in the Kentucky one and the Auburn one, he completed 50% of his passes, 50 flat.
Yeah, it hasn't been good.
For, I think, 171.5 yards per game in those 2. He did light up Vanderbilt, especially at the end of that one when Lane was trying to tack points on. But
I could light up Vanderbilt.
You could light up Vanderbilt. We could light up Vanderbilt. But just overall, that offense has not lived completely up to expectations. I expect Ole Miss to lean even more heavily into their run game in this game than they already have. And they have leaned so heavily into it so far this season because LSU's pass defense is so good. And then on the other side as well, I think, LSU, another team that leans heavily into the run, or more accurately, just shoving usage to Daniels. Daniels has 90 carries. The next highest kid on that team has 49. You're going to see a lot more of Daniels running around. I think they'll try to get the running backs more involved in this one as well. And then you're going to hope that you can get the Ole Miss suck it up and then hopefully hit the shots down the field to, like, Butte, for instance, who Mike was referring to before. Yeah.
I got another prop too.
Please.
So Zach Evans has scored a touchdown in all but one game, rushing touchdown, but it's plus 130 for him to score, to stay off the board, to be under 0.5 rushing touchdowns. Take that. And I'll tell you why. Quinshon Judkins, if you haven't heard of him, true freshman running back. He's got 10 touchdowns. He is phenomenal. And I think touchdowns, to your point as far about the under, I think touchdowns are going to be at a premium here. It's going to be hard to score. You might get a lot of field goals. And I think getting in the end zone itself is going to be difficult. And I think, if you do have a 3-headed, 4-headed monster at running back, which Ole Miss does, I think those touchdowns are going to come a little bit under for Zach Evans, and he's going to start getting less and less of them as Judkins gets more of them. So I like Zach Evans to stay off the board as a rushing scorer this week because I like the plus 130 odds. So to your point, the under is a great play here. And to the question, LSU is they're a good football team. I mean, people remember the Mississippi State loss. They remember, how bad they looked. I think most people saw LSU against Florida State. I think that's the one time the national audience saw them, because I believe that was like the marquee game and one of the only games on at that time slot. This is a different football team than what we saw there. This is a much stronger team. And Jaden Daniels, to your point, he's going to be running less, passing more, and he's got the weapons there. I know Beck is going to be out, but this team is a good football team that a lot of people are underestimating, and that's why the bettors love them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I can start to trust them a bit, right? Like, first of all, they outplayed Florida State. Just going back to that game, it was a coin flip. They came on the wrong end. 2
freaking punt return fumbles set up Florida State. 2.
Yeah. But you seen them beat good SEC teams that play in diametrically opposite ways in Mississippi State, and then last week Florida. I was on LSU last week against Florida. Again, starting to trust LSU more and more, and I'm going to be on them again. A couple other points I want to make, both about Ole Miss and then the idea of the under. Ole Miss hasn't really played anybody yet, right? Their 4 non-conference games were extremely soft. The best win they have all season is against Kentucky, and it's not like they looked awesome in that game, right? And then the other thing I want to say about the under is, while we're going to have this game of this constantly running clock because both teams are going to lean so heavily into their run games, both offenses are not nearly as good at converting points into scoring opportunities into points as the opposing defenses are at suppressing points when the offense gets into scoring opportunities. So we have a discrepancy there, where both defenses constrict when they get deep into their own end, and both offenses are not automatic at converting, red zone trips into touchdowns. So I think you're going to see a lot of field goal attempts forced in this game once those teams do get over the 50. And like I said, just expect a clock that's just running. Mike, to our next one we go. We also have a 3:30 kickoff in this one. Going back to the UCLA-Oregon game, we were talking about it a bit before. Let's jump into the handicap. Oregon now is favored by 6.5 points, a line that is progressively ticked up this week. We have a total on this game of 70.5. What's your angle on this one, Mike?
Yeah, it's 7 now. It's Oregon. Yeah, which is a horrible number, as we all know. My take on this was I didn't want to touch the sides. I just like the over. Let me see what that is live. It's 71. I think we're looking at a potential shootout here. I'm not really sold on either defense. Both teams have been in some shootouts already this season. And I just think that the way these teams match up against the other defense with dual threat quarterbacks who can beat you and keep your defense off balance, with quarterbacks that have been pretty efficient and haven't been making the typical Bo Nix mistakes. And they're, both of them have a solid rushing attack. I think you're going to see a lot of points put up in this game. So give me the over on this. I don't like that 7 line. I hate it. It's almost like, in a game like this, 9 versus 10 on the road, let's just throw a 7 out there and take a ton of money, because this could be a 7-point victory. But I think it's going to be a 7-point victory over the 71 points.
The spread of this game is very confusing to me. We have seen UCLA answer the call every game this season, and not only that, they already have 2 outright upsets as underdogs in Pac-12 play against teams that people respect in Washington and Utah, and now it's all the way up to 7 and climbing in this game. It's head scratching, and it's head scratching to the degree that it almost makes me want to play the total of it more, just because I can't explain why it's getting that high. Seems like some heavy hitters in the market really like Oregon. But I mean, I trust UCLA to it, more or less. Dorian Thompson-Robinson has been great this year, 15-2 TDI-INT ratio. I do lean the over as well with you, Mike. And I do lean UCLA as well. It's just, I did have to state my trepidation about the side of it.
I lean UCLA too. But
yeah.
The total's over in 4 of the last 5 games for Oregon, 5 of the last 5 at home. UCLA 4-0 in 5 of their last. I mean, they just the over. Every statistic speaks to both of these teams separately. Going over consistently in their last few games, and then you put them together where this matchup is not good for either defense against the offense. You definitely got to hit the over.
For sure. And we got a game here where UCLA is 19th in adjusted tempo. Oregon is at least above average. They're 46th in adjusted tempo. We have 2 top 15 offenses in terms of efficiency going up against 2 defenses that are beneath the top 50 of defensive efficiency. So it does seem like we're going to get a ton of points. And to the UCLA point before, both those games where they were underdogs, where they upset the team, there was over the point total that we got here that was scored in those games against Utah and Washington was in the 70s or whatever. So, but both these teams, that the game script figures to go that way as well. I'm going to lean the over on that one as well. Anyone in here right now, please ask us questions. Mike and I are going to get to audience questions here real soon after one more game. So we'll get to any ones that have been asked since the last time. Mike, Texas at Oklahoma. Texas laying 6. We talked a little bit about this when we were doing audience questions earlier in the episode. Texas laying 6 points on the road. We got in Stillwater. We got a total on this game of 60.5. Do you have an angle on this game?
Yeah, I like the over. Hold on a second.
We got a disembodied voice coming out of.
I just love ESPN. They're my favorite. I like the over in this. I like the way the Texas offense is playing. We're starting to see what Quinn Ewers is all about, what he can do. Yeah, the Iowa State game was kind of clunky, and we expected that, because that's how Iowa State plays. They just make you go 12 plays down the field and hope you make a mistake. But they've put up big numbers against Oklahoma, against West Virginia. And Quinn makes such a difference when it comes to Xavier Worthy, when it comes to these wide receivers, Whittington. It even, the passing game helps Bijan Robinson and opens things up for him. And then Oklahoma State, we've got the Spencer Sanders question. I'm going to try to see if there's an update on that.
Please. Yes.
Yeah, let's see. But, Spencer Sanders probable now.
Okay.
Probable. So
Spencer Sanders, he's going to play.
He's going to play. When you go from questionable to probable, you're going to play. Yeah. So that's going to help their offense as well, which is also a good offense. And neither of these defenses, I mean, I know they shut out Oklahoma, but who cares? That was with a backup quarterback. I mean, all of the Texas numbers are sort of, I don't know, they're kind of inflated on a defensive side because they held Alabama to 20 points, but Alabama had, a billion penalties in that game. It just didn't play well. Oklahoma was a shutout, but Oklahoma had their backup quarterback, and they just had no answer whatsoever offensively for anything. And Oklahoma State has had some clunkers when it comes to defense. I mean, they gave up 44 points to Central Michigan earlier, and then obviously letting that comeback occur last week against TCU. They gave up 31 to Texas Tech. I don't like either of these defenses, so I'm going to hammer that over number. If I had to guess a side, I would take Oklahoma State because there is a point that could be made. Why is Texas favored at all or even by so much? You mentioned your adjusted line. So I would take the over, and if I had to, I would take Oklahoma State.
And I'm going to take Oklahoma State with those points, especially with Sanders playing. I mentioned before the Texas defense, what they're good at is stopping the run, but they're not good against the pass. With Sanders in and Gundy's ability to spread the field as he does, you're going to get this bad Texas secondary into space. We'll have to see it. I mean, like the deep game of Sanders may go away in this one, depending on the health of that shoulder. But as long as they can get the ball into space, and if they didn't feel that Spencer Sanders was capable of shuttling the ball off to the perimeter, he wouldn't be starting in this game, and it appears he's going to. So I do like Oklahoma State getting that amount of points. They've been money in this spot going, Mike, as you know, years and years and years. Oklahoma State is they're 5-0 as an underdog since the start of last season. They're 10-1-1 against the spread in Big 12 play since the start of last season, and they're 16-4-1 against the spread against AP ranked opponents since the start of 2018. And of course, Mike Gundy's been the coach the entire time. I'm going to take the points with Oklahoma State, and I'm also going to put Texas on upset watch again, which they almost got upset last week when I put them on upset watch against Iowa State.
The underdog is 5-0 against the spread in their last 5 meetings between these two teams. So you're taking the underdog. and the over is 8-1 in the last 9 games at Oklahoma State. So I mean, these have traditionally been underdogs covering high scoring football games when it's in Stillwater. So I think we're both really leaning towards the trends here. And I think the smart money is on, maybe a parlay, Oklahoma State and the over.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, coupling some going back to the LSU one, LSU and the under, I think would be a good one. And then if you like whoever you like in UCLA, Oregon, parlaying that with the over as well. I like the same game parlays, right? Because a lot of times there's associated outcomes, stuff like that. So I like to go with those. Mike, going back to audience questions. We have a question here from Josh Witt, who asks us, what's the best parlay to bet on today? Josh, I love this question because I do a parlay on the weekdays. Usually, like on Thursday, I had a money line parlay of both the underdogs, Troy and Virginia, my Virginia Caps who came through. Both those cashed. On Saturdays, I love doing at least one where it's like 8 legs of it. You rarely hit them, but if you hit one in a season, you've more than paid for the other ones. I like to do it just to juice it up. Mike, should we go through some sort of a parlay here?
Well, how about a 6-team? Ready? I mean, a six.
Oh, please, yes.
So here's what I like. I like Iowa covering against Ohio State with the over. Okay. I like LSU covering against Ole Miss with the under. I like UCLA covering at Oregon with the over. And I like Oklahoma State covering with the over. So what's that, an 8-leg?
8-leg. Do you know what the odds are?
No, I would have to put that in.
Okay. I'm putting mine in right now. So I can give I'm going to go ridiculous, Mike.
Oh, okay. You go ridiculous. I mean, I can put those in. I just got to find them because it would be great to see it. It's probably got like 12 plus 1,200 or something like that, right?
I'm in my book right now. I'm trying to find the other underdogs
that
I like. All right. Those are my favorites. They're getting the underdogs. Okay. I think I got one here. Let's see. This is 2, 4, 6, 7. This is a 7-leg parlay. Let me see what the odds on this one would be. Okay. So this one is, now, this is a long shot. I'll say that in advance, but this is the one I'm going to go with. This is $10 to win $17.50. So what is that? 175 to 1, Mike? You're better at bet than me. Yeah. Okay. Here are the 7 legs of this thing. UL Monroe money line against Army. They're plus 205. UL Monroe's run defense is really good. Army has not beaten an FBS team this year. Both of their wins are against FCS teams. And UL Monroe, not only do they have a good run defense, they played well against the 2 option teams that they faced already this season. A lot of time, it's super hard in the middle of a season. You haven't played an option team yet, preparing for them. UL Monroe's already done this twice. The FCS team they played, Nicholls State, is a triple option team. And then Coastal Carolina has all the triple option concepts in their offense. UL Monroe blew out the FCS team, and against Coastal, they kept it really close. I think it was within a touchdown against them. So I love their matchup against Army. Next one, Navy. I'm going to take the Navy money line against Houston. Navy's plus 130. I don't trust that Houston team at all. I look to sell them whenever I can. They are injury decimated, injury riddled, and their defensive line does not push back the offensive line in the run game, especially because of all the injuries that they have on it. But all season long, the success rate and the opportunity rate and the stuff rate has been very low for the defensive front of Houston. So I'm going to take Navy to upset them. Then I'm going to go over in Northern Illinois and Ohio. I think that one's too low because Rocky Lombardi's back now. And also we have 2 top 20, maybe even 2 top 15 statistical offenses in that one going up against each other when Lombardi's playing against 2 defenses that are literally the 5 or 7 worst in the nation. Ohio's in particular is real bad, but NIU's is bad as well. Then I'm going to put BYU money line in at minus 255 because I saw this morning that Jonathan Bennett is starting for Liberty. Liberty claims that Charlie Brewer is going to work in. We'll see about that, but he's definitely not starting. Jonathan Bennett should not be on an FBS field. In his starts earlier this season, Liberty has played way down. They almost lost to Gardner Webb in one of them. Akron kept it close in another one. I think BYU is a very safe team to not get upset, assuming that that news is correct, that Jonathan Bennett's going to play the majority of this game. So BYU money line is minus 255. Then LSU money line, we talked about that one before. Then the LSU Mississippi under, and the last leg of it, I'm taking ECU to upset UCF. ECU is plus 170. I think we're going to talk about this game in a little bit, but that would be the last leg of it. So again, really quickly, the 7 legs of my parlay are UL Monroe money line, Navy money line, over of Northern Illinois, Ohio, BYU money line, LSU money line, LSU Mississippi under, and the ECU money line. What do you think about that, Mike?
What did you get? A plus what?
I got plus. Well, now it's $10 to win 1778. So what is that? 178 to 1? Is that right? I think that's how you'd say that.
I can't do math.
It's too early for math, but it's not too early for handicapping. So let's get to our next game after we just gave out multiple winning parlays.
I got a quick 6-play parlay for you folks. Ready? This is going to get
let's go.
49.63. So you bet $3 on this, you're going to win $150. Iowa plus 29.5. LSU minus 1, Oklahoma State plus 5.5, UCLA, which is the riskiest one, plus 7, and then take the over in Mississippi State, Alabama at 61. Take the over Kansas State, TCU 54.5. Pop $3 on that, you win $151. I'm putting it in right now.
I like that one. I
don't come in. I mean, we know it's not going to come in, but I'm having fun.
my 178 one to shot. 178 to 1 shot is going to come in, Mike. You have to believe.
It's definitely a little bit more likely to come in. I mean, but your odds are, you bet 10 to win 17. I'm going like, I want $150. I need $150.
And by the way, anyone out there, if you want to play with the house's money on a bet today, DraftKings Sportsbook, our title sponsor, if you sign up for a new account today, put a deposit a minimum of $5 and use the promo code CFB Pros, you get a free $50 bet. So if you want to just play with the house of money a little bit, we got the link. Mike has it on his Twitter bio. It's also beneath us in the video down in the show notes, I think, or the description or whatever. Click on that and get in on that offer. Mike, let's see, do we have another? Oh, we got another one. Mike L asks us, Mike. We got a lot of Mikes asking questions. It's like who's on first, Abbott and Costello. But Mike L asks us, can Max Dugan run against K-State D? What will TCU need to do to exploit to win this game? And then he said, I think K-State is winning outright. Mike, we're talking about that game here. We're talking about that game in a second. So just hold on for 1 second. Mike and I are talking about it. It'll probably be in about 15 minutes. We'll be talking about it near the end of the show. We'll get to that one. And we got one other one. 2K asks us, should I be rowing the boat at +5 or letting it sink and riding the Nittany Lions for a bounce back after getting shellacked by Michigan last week? That's a good segue. That's our game. You want to go right into that one?
Yeah, let's go right into that one.
Let's go right in. So we got a live line. Is it -5 or -4.5 for Penn State? Okay, so Penn State -5 in Happy Valley today with a total of 43 hosting Minnesota. Who do you like in that one?
Row the boat. So get in the boat and row it. And the reason for that is, Penn State's coming off an awful loss. They're at home. They're starting Sean Clifford again.
Is it going to be Clifford? Do we know that he's good to go?
Well, let me see what the latest is, but
so I can say, as you're looking that up, Tanner Morgan, I like every indication I've gotten this week, and I got multiple texts about this, is 99.999% out. The way it was described to me earlier this week was barring a late week miracle. So you're going to see the kid with the Greek last name, Ethan Kaliakanos, or I can't pronounce that kid's name, but he came in at the end of the Illinois game and was brutal. Threw 2 interceptions and not that many attempts, and didn't complete many passes either. Looked very bad in his first action. I can tell you the Minnesota program is very high on that Kaliakanos kid. He was one of the highest quarterback recruits that they've signed in years and years and years. I think Mike Farrell would know better than me on this, but I think he was their highest quarterback rated recruit since Adam Weber. But again, he looked bad in their last game against Illinois, like real bad. And now you're going into a whiteout in Happy Valley where you figure it's going to be a hornet's nest atmosphere after the Michigan loss. And now you got this kid coming in who hasn't looked good so far, making his first career start. I don't know about that. I do trust Minnesota's defense, and I know that they're going to go super duper run heavy with Mo Ibrahim. I was also hearing that this week that Minnesota has constructed this game plan where it's give Mo the ball as much as he can eat.
Oh, yeah.
As much as he can eat.
Look
right?
what happened. I mean, look what Michigan did to Penn State's run defense, which was a vaunted run defense, and they stink. And this is a big, strong, physical offensive line that loves to play smash mouth football, that wants to feed Mo. They have actually fairly good running back depth as well, and they're going to just pound the ball at Penn State and say, can you stop me, just like Michigan did. The reason I think Sean Clifford, he's a game-time decision. Okay, so he's listed questionable still as we speak. First of all, James Franklin is an extremely stubborn human being. So if you tell him not to play Sean Clifford, which people have been telling him for years and years and years, and especially this year with Drew Alara, the super freshman, big-time, huge kid with a live arm as the backup, he's going to play Sean Clifford. Somebody put on Twitter, David Franklin treats Sean Clifford like a make-a-wish kid. Which is hilarious because he could do no wrong, and James Franklin's going to start him no matter what. And he even came out to say that Sean Clifford deserves the right to start if he's healthy, which he doesn't. But what I see here is with this Penn State home team, if they fall down, if they fall behind, the Boo Birds are going to come out. Then you might have to make a mid-game change if Clifford is the starter to Alar, who's a freshman, who's going to feel all this pressure, who's a good player. I just think this is going to be a potential for this Penn State football fan base to turn against Franklin if they fall behind in this game, and then the team is going to crumble. So I row the boat. I think Minnesota's playing together. I think there's been so much criticism of Franklin this past week. He's been very defensive about it. He's been focusing on the tunnel, all this other stuff that I think, he's going to trot Sean Clifford out there as usual, and they're going to have a clunker at home. And then we're going to see what's the buyout, Matt Rule, all that talk is going to occur. It's a vision I see. So take Minnesota to cover the 5.
Were you visited in your dreams last night, Mike? And
about this because
the ghost of Penn State football past.
Penn State fans love to complain about James Franklin, and James Franklin loves to give them a reason to complain. He's a good coach. He's done a good job. There's no lack for wins. It's just that they're third tier in the East. And he just gives them more fodder for it. And I think that's what people make up to be he's a bad coach. And I think this is going to be a bad decision to play Sean Clifford. Then it's going to be a decision to throw Drew Alara in there when Clifford struggles. And then I just think you're going to have, sort of a quarterback tryout occurring at home against the Minnesota team that's just going to line up and pound the ball at you. So I'd like Minnesota to cover that 5.
So it's hard for me to back Minnesota with the backup playing, and that's the indications I've been given just because of seeing him last week. I will give the caveat again that people inside the Minnesota program love that kid and think he's going to be way better, but until I see it, and this is a hard environment, so it's hard for me to trust them. But also on the other side, if whether it's like Alar didn't look good last week either. Of course, he was playing Michigan, but when he came in for Clifford, and if Clifford's in, he's Trace McSorley, poor man's Trace McSorley. It's the same thing of the noodle arm scrambler. You don't have the explosive element, especially with Dotson not there anymore. Laying 5 in that proposition, it's tough, especially because Minnesota's been so good as an underdog. 8-3-1 the last 2 seasons as an underdog. Minnesota with 7 outright upsets. And Penn State has failed to cover their last 3 games. So they've been struggling on the other side of it. I'm going to avoid it. I'm just going to go the under. And whether we get a compromised Clifford or whether we get Allaire in his first start, you're going against the Minnesota offense. It's just going to be handing it off the whole time. Both defenses are good. I'm just going to lean the under on that one. So that's what I'm going to go with. Mike, going to our –
They're both game-time decisions as of right this very second, both Clifford and Tanner Morgan. So there's no update on them. So we're going to have to wait till tonight. It'll come out probably around 4:00 or so, but we're going to have to wait.
Yeah, and I don't have any information on Clifford, but like I said, everything I've heard this week is that Tanner Morgan will not be playing for whatever that's worth. The next game is a 7:30 Eastern kickoff. Texas A&M traveling to South Carolina. This line has come all the way down to Texas A&M -3, and we have a total on this game of 44.5. Who do you like in this one, Mike?
Yeah, it's just, to me, this comes down to talent. I'm not really thrilled with what I see from Texas A&M this season, but I'm less thrilled what I see from South Carolina. So they beat Kentucky, I know, but that was Kentucky without their quarterback. They're 4-2. Texas A&M's 3-3, but Texas A&M coming off a bye, coming off a close loss to Alabama. South Carolina has Rattler, Stogner, Lloyd. They've got solid players on offense, but the talent level at Texas A&M is much, much higher. And I just think the more talented team wins this football game. I can't picture them losing this game on the road. So then are they going to win by 3? Yeah, I think they're going to win by 10 points. I think they're going to really make a concerted effort to be a little bit different on offense. They've had an off week. They've been able to put in some different plays, some different things. A chain's going to be used a lot more. And I think this offense is going to be crisp and rested. And we're going to see a little bit of what Jimbo can do offensively with all this talent.
This one is a really, really hard one, right? Like with A&M, it's been hard to get your finger on them all season. And then they, after they lost Anaya Smith and stuff like that, they have even less offensive playmakers than we thought heading in, and they had a dearth of them already. What you want to attack on the South Carolina defense, it's their defensive front and their run defense in general. So I would agree, you expect Achane to get a lot of touches. How many can he handle in this game? Because if Jimbo would probably love to give the guy 40 touches in this game, I don't think he's going to be able to handle them, but he's going to get as much as he possibly can, because the South Carolina pass defense is much better. And of course, A&M has all the questions at quarterback again this season. And then on the other side, though, South Carolina is going to run for a whole lot of yards in this game. A&M's run defense is their biggest problem, especially the success rate thing. You can nick those guys all day long. Texas A&M's defense ranks 98th in rushing success rate, whereas South Carolina's run game has been fabulous this season, way better than I thought. And it's a part of the reason why they've been able to make up for the passing game not progressing as much, I think, as some people hoped when you brought in Rattler, when you brought in the multiple transfers they had at receiver in Rucker, and then the kid they got from the FCS and Stogner, like you mentioned, stuff like that. The running game has been awesome to make up for that. South Carolina's running game ranks 24th in success rate, number 35 in marginal explosiveness. Marshawn Lloyd's been a big part of that. I expect Marshawn Lloyd to have a big game. I expect Achane to have a big game. What I would probably be betting in this game is the props as opposed to either side, because my side bet is going to be a lean. I do lean ever so slightly with A&M. I could see this one going either way, but I do. It's hard for me to get away from the image in my head of Texas A&M's offensive line just road grading South Carolina the entire time, and Achane running, through the fields, with the wind blowing through his hair the entire game in the open field. So I slightly lean that way, but again, I think both the running games are going to have success. So I mean, maybe over would be my other slight lean if I was, as far as the total goes. My adjusted total on that game is a couple points above where the Vegas line is. 46.5 is what I got. And again, even though I don't think either team is going to have success passing, I think you're going to see a lot of it in terms of rushing. Anyone watching in the audience right now, ask us questions if you have any about any bets you're considering, props, side totals. We'll get to them here in a second.
Couple quick notes that Chief just sent me. The favorite is 4-0-1 against the spread in the last 5 meetings between these two teams. So A&M's the favorite. So the favorite usually covers against the spread in these matchups. And the Aggies are 4-0-1 against the spread in their last 5 meetings, directly versus the Gamecocks, period. Doesn't matter who the favorite is. So they do well against South Carolina. They match up well against South Carolina. So to your point, we're both taking Texas A&M. We're not in love with it, but the numbers play out that this should be an Aggies victory by 4 more.
Yeah, and A&M's defense is still real good, right? Like number 6 SP plus, and they played the number 6 strength of schedule to get here. South Carolina is battle tested-ish, 13th. But they did benefit from some circumstances. You have to mention that. Like when they got Kentucky, they didn't have to face Will Levis. They got to face that true freshman that, at least for right now, shouldn't be on an FBS field. He really struggled in that game, etc. So, okay, going to our next one here, Mike. We got UCF travels to East Carolina, 7:30 Eastern. We got a live line on this one. I think a UCF -5, and then a total of 63.5. Do you have a lean in this one?
Interesting. You chose this one, and you've already teased to who you like.
Yep.
You know, East Carolina's getting 5 at home. UCF, but the disrespect for Jean-Reese Plumlee coming off the best passing game of his life
against Mike. Against who? Tell the folks who he was playing.
Doesn't matter if it's Temple or whoever. It doesn't matter. And the disrespect against Gus, one of the all-time great coaches to ever live, is just remarkable. I mean, UCF has been playing well. You know, they had a couple of weird games here and there where they struggled and lost. I think it was Louisville they lost to. This team's playing well, and their running attack, I think, is pretty solid. Now, I know ECU can run the ball as well, and this is a big sort of conference football game, and it's on the road, and East Carolina's 4-3, and you know they're coming off a big win against Memphis in a shootout, and you know, but UCF is a team that I bet on every week this season except last week. That line against Temple was too much for me, and they came out and scored 70 points. So give me UCF or give me death. They're going to cover this one, and they're going to cover it strong.
Well, I hate to follow that up with the death, but I'm taking ECU. As I teased earlier, there's a couple different things going on here. Number one, I think UCF is not as good as people think. I think ECU is better than people think. And in this game with the home team with ECU, I think they match up really well with UCF in terms of the on-field profiles. But speaking of the first thing about the team quality, UCF is 5-2, and Mike, like you mentioned, ECU is 4-3. But UCF has 4.5 second-order wins, which are more indicative of how the team actually played on the field. So half a win less than their actual record. Whereas ECU, they have 4.7 second-order wins plus 7. So in the same amount of games, ECU actually has more second-order wins than UCF. And ECU played the harder schedule to this point to get here. Speaking to the on-field matchup about how ECU matches up well, the UCF offense sputters when it's not running the ball well. When they're not playing Temple and they can throw. But usually the passing game with I hate to shoot some more strays at your boy Jean-Reese Plumlee, Mike, but I got to do it. His accuracy is not very good. It's the reason that he never took over at Mississippi outside of the Rich Rod time when they were doing the spread option stuff. You've always had concerns about specifically the accuracy and the placement. He is a baseball player, so the arm strength isn't awful. But in terms of that stuff as a passer, ECU's run defense is awesome. It was the main point I was going to make. They rank number 22 in success rate, number 4 against explosion. So you would figure the ECU defense matches up pretty well against UCF here, and it's going to force Jean-Reese Plumlee to throw a little bit more. We'll see how they do in that. But again, not playing Temple is probably going to be an issue there. The strength of UCF's defense, meanwhile, is its run defense. The Knights rank top 3 in the nation in preventing successful rushing plays. But ECU's offense, it doesn't care about rushing efficiency, built around the passing game and generating explosive runs. So controlling things with the passing game, and then you set up the explosive runs when you can get them. That's a problem for UCF's defense. They do have the solid defense, but they rank 125th against rushing explosion. So you would figure the ECU is going to break off some long runs here. And then UCF's pass defense is not nearly as good as their run defense. So I think ECU can get them through the air as well. I'm going to take ECU with the points. I'm also calling for the upset, Mike Farrell. I say the Pirates get it done today and knock off UCF. Our last one, our last game that we're going to cap, and then we'll go to audience questions one more time. So if you guys have any questions, really quick, type them in, and we'll hit them at the very end. We only got about 10 minutes left, so hit us really quickly if you got anything. Mike, the last one you and I are going to discuss is Kansas State at TCU. The line last night was 3.5, but I saw this morning it had dropped to 3, right, with TCU? TCU -3 now, maybe?
Yeah.
I should check that one live.
3.5. It's 3.5.
3.5. Okay. So it had gotten down to 3. Now it's back up to 3.5. We got a total on this one of 54.5, and that's live as well. Mike, who do you like in this one?
I like Kansas State. I've talked about Kansas State all season long as the sleeper in the Big 12, and arguably a case could be made that they're the best team in the Big 12. I know they had the one blip earlier this season. I know there's, teams that have been hotter like Kansas and teams now that are hotter like, TCU. But Kansas is a very, very strong football team. They match up well against TCU, and they always have. They're 6-1 in the last 7 games against TCU against the spread. So you're giving me 3.5 points, which is great. They're 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 meetings against TCU. And the underdog usually covers in this series, 5-2 underdog. So all of these numbers point to me, saying Kansas State is going to slow down TCU. TCU coming off a very, very emotional football game, coming back, beating Oklahoma State. They're on a little bit of a high. Kansas State's not a team you let down against. I'm sure they're going to be focused for this football game. Sonny Dykes is no fool. But when you win a game like that, and you are at home, and you're a top 10 team, and all these expectations are there, and you have a Kansas State team, which I think has a pretty good offensive line, a very dangerous runner in Deuce Vaughn, but also a dangerous runner in Anthony Martinez, the quarterback, and a defense that I think is a little bit underrated. I think they're going to be able to keep this game lower than expected when it comes to points. TCU was used to putting up a lot of points. And I think Kansas State is going to cover the 3.5 and maybe win this game outright. So I'm on Kansas State. I think they're great. I can't explain that Tulane loss. I just can't. But aside from that loss, this is a really good football team that had to grind it out against Iowa State in that situation, had to outscore Oklahoma in that situation. They could do so many different things, beat you with points or with defense, that I just like them, in this matchup, despite how hot TCU is.
Yeah, so I'll say in this one, both my adjusted line and my adjusted total are very close to what the Vegas numbers are. My adjusted line in this game is TCU minus 3.1. My adjusted total is 52, which is right near the Vegas total as well. So I don't see a ton of value on this game on either one of them. It's more of a conviction where I lean. I would lean towards TCU just because I trust them more. But Mike, your point is well taken, where for the last 2 weeks, TCU has played with fire both times. Kansas had a shot at the end of that game. And then last week against Oklahoma State, where because of Spencer Sanders' shoulder injury probably is why TCU even had the shot to get back into that game, force overtime, and win it in overtime. So they are playing with fire a bit. But you return home here, you get Kansas State at home, and TCU has been generating so many explosive plays on offense, particularly when they're playing at home. Kansas State's defense has been very good. In fact, it's top 10 SP+. But two things, they haven't played a lot of good offenses, a lot of explosive offenses. The most explosive one they played, Oklahoma, they allowed 7.5 yards per play against Oklahoma. TCU's offense is way more explosive than that, and TCU can do two different things. Kansas State's really good at keeping you off a schedule, but they, there's the opportunity to allow the explosive plays for the opposing offense, and TCU should be able to take advantage of those. Even though you're expecting TCU to have a come down spot or a letdown spot at some point. You sort of got that though last week with Oklahoma State, and they were able to overcome the circumstances. And that's what I've seen over and over and over again with this TCU team. So they've sort of won me over, and I'm going to trust them, at least as far as my lean goes. But again, I think there's a lot of games and a lot of bets on the board where there's more value than this one, just because the margins on this one are very tight right now. So
I do have a prop in this one too.
Oh, please. Yeah.
So Kenry Miller's number is 81.5 rushing yards. I think you hammer the over, even though I have Kansas State covering and potentially winning this football game. Everybody thinks that TCU is this pass-happy Sonny Dykes offense, but Miller, at home in the last 2 games, has rushed for 136 and 104, and he is a huge key part of that offense. He gets a ton of carries. I think he's going to go over that 81.5, despite the fact that I like the Kansas State defense.
Yeah, and Mike, to your point, Kansas State is better against the pass than they are against the run. Kansas State's passing defense ranks number 14 in success rate, success rate against the pass, whereas Kansas State's defense, run defense, ranks number 62 in success rate against runs. So the matchup there for Miller is pretty good as well. And then, of course, Max Duggan sort of teeing off on if he finds any holes there, et cetera. So let's see if we have any other questions, Mike, before we wrap up for today. Let's see. Mike LSS, can Max Duggan run against Kansas State? Yes, I think, yeah. Well, I'm not sure what his prop line is, but that might be a look for an over as well. Because, when he breaks containment, he's going to be able to shred him a little bit on the ground. Let's see. Mike Huseman asked, by the end of the show, we're going to have Farrell saying James Franklin is Auburn's next head coach. Farrell, do you have a response to that?
Yeah, I do. Well, James Franklin has the best agent known to man. I'm not sure if it's Sexton or not, but James Franklin is in the coaching discussion for every opening every year for the last 5 years. And with each time he gets a new contract extension. So I'm not saying he's going to be the next coach at Auburn, but I bet you his name's going to be thrown out there.
Okay. And we got another one from Mike. Washington -7.5 against Cal. How do you guys feel about that game? I'll go first on this one. I'm not playing that game because it's another one where I think the margins are fairly close. And I understand why people are starting to get out on Washington. I'm going to trust them here anyway. I have questions about the Washington secondary after all the NFL guys that they've lost. Everybody has questions about them because everyone's been able to throw on Washington. But Cal is not – that's not their game. What Cal – certainly their defense is up to par with where it's been in recent years under Justin Wilcox. But now they can run the ball a little bit with Jaden Ott, who Mike had brought up earlier. But I don't think they're going to be able to take advantage of that. Cal is going to be able to take advantage of Washington's defensive bugaboo. And Washington can score on anybody, so they're going to be able to solve that Wilcox defense. I would, with my lean, I would lean towards laying the points.
Yeah, and I got a prop in that one. Michael Penix Jr. is 339.5 as his passing yardage. Take the under on that. He's been throwing up crazy numbers, but Cal's defense isn't horrible, even though they're a horrible football team. They've given up 300 yards in only 2 games this season passing. Second best defense in the Pac-12, at least when it comes to scoring average. I think they play better than the record speaks, and I think Penix is due for sort of a down game statistically. So take the under 339.5.
Okay. So another angle there, and we got another prop question here from Mike L. We have just so many Mikes today. Mike L asks thoughts on Jason Bean over 200.5, so 200 flat 0.5 passing yards against Baylor. KU's QB2, another start with Jalen Daniels out. Mike, do you have any thoughts about that? Can Jason Bean get over the 200-yard threshold against Baylor?
DraftKings, it's 193.5. I would take the over. I think you can get over that.
What is it at DraftKings?
193.5.
Oh.
Yeah. Take the over. Take the over.
Yeah, I think so. Baylor's pass defense is where you can attack them. Baylor ranks 101st in passing success rate on defense, number 96th in marginal efficiency, number 75 in completion percentage against. Jason Bean's a very explosive player. Track star from Texas, who also has a solid arm. His bugaboo, it's not that stuff. It's he makes like 5 wonky decisions per game. So I imagine Baylor's going to flip the field on him at least once with the turnover, but the yardage is absolutely going to be there. The yardage has been there for Kansas in every single game. So especially with that number beneath 200, I would lean for that as well. I think that's the last question that we got. Everybody, thank you for joining Mike and I for another episode of College Football Game Day Live. We want to thank our sponsors, DraftKings Sportsbook, and tell you guys about this offer one more time because you absolutely should sign up for this today because you'll get a free $50 bet. Betting pros and DraftKings Sportsbook are teaming up to bring you a wild offer this season. New customers can get a $50 free bet, like I was mentioning, when making your first-time deposit. To get in on this, just create your new DraftKings Sportsbook account using the promo code CFBPros. Make that minimum deposit of $5 or more, but $5 will get you the free $50. And then use your $50 free bet on any college football action today, preferably one that Mike or I advocated for earlier. Again, to claim this offer, go to the link in our video description or pin in the live chat and sign up to get started. For Mike Farrell, I'm Thor Nystrom. Again, thank you for joining us on another episode of College Football Game Day Live. Enjoy your college football Saturday, and good luck with your bets.